I'm Raheela Mahomed. Welcome to the programme. Police in Belgium have arrested 5 people, including a European Parliament Vice President. It's part of a corruption investigation into alleged influence peddling by an unspecified Gulf state. Greek Socialist MEP Eva Kaili was suspended by her party following her arrest. Prosecutors said they were looking into payments and gifts given to people in strategic positions within the parliament. Kaili is one of 14 vice presidents of the European Parliament. Well, the Belgian Federal Prosecutor's Office announced the arrests without identifying the suspects, their nationality, or naming the country suspected of contributing to corruption in a major EU institution. This is what the prosecutors said about the investigation.
So the searches carried out on Friday were aimed at intercepting computer equipment and mobile phones. Equipment that is already being used and that should enable us to substantiate the suspicions that prosecutors have at the moment. More surprisingly, a large sum of money was found, 600,000 euros, at one of the addresses. The owner of the sum will now have to explain what this money was doing at her house.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined by Dimitrios Papadimoulis. He is a member of the European Parliament and also one of its vice presidents. It's good to have you with us here on DW News. What's your reaction to these latest arrests?
It is a very sad day for the European Parliament. It is also a sad day for our parliamentary democracy all over the European Union. And I think that it is important to do whatever it takes in order to have a positive outcome of that large-scale investigations about very large scandal of corruption. And I think that it is important to support as European Parliament, and I'm sure that also this is the position of our President, Roberta Metsola, the Belgian authorities and any national authority which could be involved in that investigation in the coming days in order to find the truth.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any clarity to which Gulf country these allegations are linked to?
According to a Belgian media, Le Soir, the Gulf country is identified as Qatar. And there was a debate a few weeks ago in the plenary in November in which Vice President Kaili had supported in a very hard way and harsh way that Qatar is a pioneer on human rights and labor rights. And this wasn't the case for the European Parliament as a whole. The final resolution that we voted with a very large majority, criticizing the Qatari authorities just for the opposite.
Now, we know an investigation is currently underway, but all eyes are on the credibility of the European Parliament. How much of a responsibility does this lie within the institution itself and also in addition to these individuals involved?
Look, as we are informed, Kaili's office has been sealed by the Belgian police yesterday. And after some investigation, she was arrested. Although she has an immunity. Her party had expelled her immediately. Her political group had suspended Kaili's membership with an immediate effect. All that data shows that it's something very damaging and very sincere. So I think that for our House, it is important to do whatever it takes to help the authorities for a positive outcome, because there is a very, very large majority of the parliamentarians who do not play that dirty games.
Dimitrios Papadimoulis from the European Parliament, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you too.
Now, protesters took to the streets in Iran again after a man was put to death in the first execution over anti-government demonstrations. Mohsen Shekari was hanged on Thursday after what observers described as a show trial. Activists are warning that at least a dozen more Iranian protesters could face the same fate. But that hasn't stopped them from speaking out against the government.
Death to Khamenei, protesters shout in Zahedan on Friday. They also took to the streets in other cities like here in Rutsa, one day after the execution of a 23-year-old demonstrator. Others are also facing the death penalty, the most prominent rapper Toomaj Salehi. He was arrested nearly 40 days ago. The musician was forced to make a confession on state television, a common procedure in Iran.
Music can spread violence. That was my mistake. I apologize to all of you and to society.
On Friday afternoon, we visited his uncle in Belgium in Germany, where he runs a copy shop. Naturally, he's watched the confession video. He told us his reaction.
A feeling of hatred, of rage towards the Islamic Republic. What I saw in this video is that Toomaj didn't speak voluntarily. The voice of Toomaj was not one that was full of energy and joy to express his inner feelings.
While Salehi has not yet been convicted, Dr. Hamid Geher Hassanlu has already been sentenced to death. He was convicted of participating in the killing of a militia member at a protest in the city of Karaj, despite his denials. The doctor and his wife were arrested and beaten in the night, according to his brother, who lives in Amsterdam.
4 of his ribs were broken during torture. One of the ribs injured his lungs, and that caused internal bleeding.
The radiologist had to be operated on 3 times, his brother told us. Shortly after he woke up from the last operation, the 53-year-old was sentenced to death. His wife was forced, under torture, to testify against him. The only proof that Salehi is alive is his forced confession. His uncle is deeply concerned. The family hasn't been able to visit him since his imprisonment. 2 cases out of many that highlight the brutality with which those in power in Iran are dealing with protesters. Nevertheless, many Iranians agree that it's worth fighting for.
Well, Daniela Zeberi is an Iranian activist based in Germany, and she told me what she's been hearing from protesters in Iran.
They're telling me that the regime is trying to frighten them, but what we see in the videos we get, what we hear from the people, what we read from the messages they send us, is that the courage is way greater than the fear. And that's what we're seeing also in Baluchistan and Zahedan happening yesterday, it was 1 day ago, where the people of Baluchistan and Zahedan went out on the streets again, went out to protest again, even though week by week they're getting slaughtered by the regime. We see that in Kurdistan, we see that in Tehran, we see that everywhere in the country. People are not letting the regime frighten them.
But we are continuing to see more heavy-handed tactics by the government. What does this mean for the protesters living there?
The government already announced that they are getting harder and more brutal against the protesters. But you see, it's about surviving for the people in Iran. It's about the bare minimum. It's about freedom and surviving. And because we know the people know that they don't have a future with this regime. So that's why they still go on the streets and protest. And also they know if they stop going out of the streets, then that's it. Then 18,000 people and more who got arrested will be hanged, just like Mohsen Shekari was hanged a few days ago.
Now, more Western sanctions are being imposed on Iran. Will this make any difference?
I hope there will be full sanctions on the regime this time. Because what we have seen from the European Parliament so far was like, I don't know what it was. It was like, for example, the morality police, Gashte Shot, was sanctionized in the first package. But that's weird because the Gashte Shot, the morality police, doesn't have any money to be frozen. They also don't have money to enter the European Union because they said we won't let them enter anymore. That it was good to sanctionize them as a symbol, but for me it's better to also sanctionize the whole Revolutionary Guard, the RGC, responsible for so many deaths, not only Iran but in the whole world. For me it's important to sanction the regime. For example, the 272 politicians that voted for the execution of all these political prisoners, and that's what I'm missing in the sanctions the European Parliament is doing all the time, and that's what I'm hoping for the next sanction package, that the regime will be sanctionized.
Okay, Daniela Zeberi speaking to us in Germany. Thank you so much for your time.